Just say it, man. Don't make me ask 20 questions.
What is the point?
Get to the point.
Just say it already.
Welcome to the Podcram. What are you doing, man? Your life's shorter every day. If you're not sure what to do with your time, maybe this little pep talk will help you out.
I don't know. My somewhat facile answer is always, I don't know what to do about these things, but the first step is to talk about them. And if you can't even talk about them, we're never going to solve them. And then maybe that's only the small first step. I think there is always this strange thing where there's so many of these things, where somehow talking about things is the first step, but then it also becomes the excuse for not doing more, not really solving them. There probably are all these dietary things where you sort of know what you're supposed to do. And then if you know what you're supposed to do, maybe that's good enough, and you can still have one piece of chocolate cake before you go on the diet tomorrow or whatever.
Right.
And so somehow figuring out a way to turn this knowledge into something actionable is always a thing that's tricky. It's sort of where I always find myself very skeptical of all these modalities of therapy, and where the theory is that you figure out people's problems, and by figuring them out, you change them, and then ideally it becomes an activator for change, and then in practice it often becomes the opposite. The way it works is something like this. It's like psychotherapy gets advertised as self-transformation. And then after you spend years in therapy and maybe you learn a lot of interesting things about yourself, you sort of get exhausted from talking to the therapist. And at some point, it crashes out from self-transformation into self-acceptance. And you realize one day, no, you're actually just perfect the way you are. and so there are these things that may be very powerful on the level of insight and telling us things about ourselves, but then do they actually get us to change?
Well, that is an interesting thing about talking about things, because I think you're correct that when you talk about things, oftentimes you are at least in some way avoiding doing those things.
It's a question. It's a question, yeah.
In some ways, it's a substitute. But also, you have to talk about them to understand that you need to do something.
Yeah, that's always my excuse. I acknowledge, but you have to do that. And then I also realize that it's often my cop-out answer, too.
It could be both things, right? The problem is taking action and what action to take. And, the paralysis by analysis, where you're just like trying to figure out what to do and how to do it.
Yeah.
But I think talking about it is the most important thing.
Strategy is often a euphemism for procrastination.
Yes, it is.
Something like that.
There's a lot of that going on. It's very hard for people to just take steps, but they talk about it a lot.
Now you have discovered something very beautiful, which is peace of mind comes through 100% effort. And then you will never procrastinate again. Because you know that all I have to do is put forth 100%. It's not about the outcome. It's did I do everything that I could do? I'm guessing that for your viewers who are not happy with their lives, the reason they're not happy is because they know they can do better. No human being wakes up and thinks to themselves, oh my God, my life sucks because I can't fly. It's impossible. So it causes us no suffering. What causes us suffering is when something is possible and we do not do it, when we know we're capable. So put forth 100% effort and recognize that you're just human. And you'll find peace of mind. And then once you realize this is the way to find peace of mind, then it becomes easy to put forth effort.
So I learned about this idea called the region beta paradox, right? So the region beta paradox, imagine that if you were to go a mile or less, you would walk it. And if you were to go more than a mile, you would drive it. Paradoxically, you would go 2 miles quicker than you would go 1 mile. So that means that sometimes worse situations can be better than better situations. And this is an issue when if you only decide to act after you cross a certain threshold of badness or whatever, you can end up being stuck in region beta. So for instance, the friend that should leave his job really, really needs to leave his job, but it's just about passable. His boss isn't that much of a dick. Maybe the benefits are okay or whatever. Mm-hmm. Or the person that's in a relationship with someone that they really don't want to stay with, and it's not that brilliant, but it's not that bad. They don't abuse them. Everything's okay. The person that stays in an apartment that's got some mold on the ceiling, but it's not too much mold and whatever. All of these people would be better off if their situations were worse, because it would galvanize them into actually doing something. You understand what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
You can get stuck in this chasm of comfortable complacency that sits somewhere in the middle. If things are good, great, no problem. If things are bad, great, activation energy to go and make them good. If things are just about passable, you end up being comfortably numb.
Ooh, yeah.
Because I told somebody this whole thing, and he was right where you were sitting. I think I told you. Somebody was right here, and they said, wow, everything you're saying makes sense. You know, I've got a project. All the pieces are actually pretty much there. I just guess I'm not ready. And I said, that's going to be on your tombstone. Here lies so-and-so. He was never ready. Why is it that art you have to be ready for? In life, you didn't know you were going to get a flat tire. You didn't know you were going to go to work and be fired. You didn't know the fires were going to be raging. Every day you're like this, you know, trying to move with the, you're not ready. You're not ready for anything life is throwing at you, but you become ready on the spot, right? Yeah. Why is it that we think art and life should not be the same? Why art has to be, you have to be ready before you can begin. Yeah. That's no relation. They should be the same. You're not going to be ready until you're almost done with a project, because a lot of the answers you need are not going to happen until you're on the journey. Yeah. And that's what keeps most people from doing it. You know, you used to ask me, how do you get so much done? It's like, you know, I set the bridge on fire and then I run across. I just guess I'm not ready. That's going to be on your tombstone. Here lies so-and-so. He was never ready.
There are slightly less than 5,000 weeks in a life. Think about that fear.
Right.
One more just went by. Right? Come up with a jar with like 5,000 sweets in it or something, and just take one out every week and watch the odds that you're ever going to accomplish anything or do anything or inspire somebody. You know, go down and further and further. Why don't you put it off another 2 weeks or 3 weeks? Or why don't we start this in September?
That's right.
You know?
That's right. Yeah. That's the way.
Thanks for listening to this installment of The Podgram. I hope it contains something useful for you. If you enjoy these selections and are curious about the curator's own thoughts, you can check out my other podcast, Psychic Lube, where I share concise concepts meant to grease the intellectual gears and help get your creative juices flowing. Each episode is an ongoing collaborative project that welcomes listeners to expand or rebut its points by email or comment, the most interesting of which get incorporated through periodic re-recordings. As always, if you're intrigued by today's content, I encourage you to go listen to the full podcast in its original form directly from its creators so that their sponsors keep paying them to make stuff for us and nobody feels compelled to sue me for copyright infringement. Now, get off your phone and go do smart stuff. Have a productive day.